its 10-ton payload, the Second World War Avro Lancaster was designed and purpose-built for destruction. For its 7-man crew who flew high-risk missions to Germany and beyond, it was either a life raft or a flying coffin. The Lancaster was born into a time of rapid development in bomber technology. But at the beginning of the war, however, the Allies had to make do with what aircraft they had.
Without the contribution of this old, indeed obsolete aircraft, we may well have lost the Battle of the Atlantic, and then, as Churchill said, the whole of the Second World War.
It sank more enemy shipping than any other Allied aircraft during World War II.
It outlived all the aircraft that were brought in to replace it.
The Fairey Swordfish was a somewhat unlikely hero in the Allies' struggle for naval supremacy. With its wire and fabric construction, open cockpit and biplane design, it looked more like something from World War I. But the string bag, as it was affectionately known, was dependable and versatile. The Swordfish was just as at home carrying depth charges and bombs as astride a 1,600-pound torpedo. Sceptical aircrews soon came to view it with great affection.
All pilots thought it was the most wonderful aircraft because it was a completely forgiving aircraft. You could do any stupid thing with it and get away with it. That's why, in fact, it was never used as a trainer, because no pilot would learn anything from it. The Pegasus engine was really a remarkable engine. It would go on for hours and hours and hours, and even when you had it damaged by flak, for instance, there had been occasions, in fact, when I think it was 2 cylinders were actually knocked out, and it still continued to fly perfectly well. The only time that really ever stopped and you fell in the sea was if you got the wrong fuel or ran out of it. That was your own fault anyway.
It was these good manners that made the Swordfish the perfect plane for aircraft carrier-based operations. In 1940, 21 string bags destroyed 6 ships of the Italian fleet, including 3 battleships, at Taranto, in a daring attack that apparently formed the blueprint for Pearl Harbor. A year later, the Swordfish helped to destroy the pride of the German Navy, the Bismarck. Although highly successful in attacks of this kind, with one rear-firing Lewis gun, the Swordfish was never designed for air-to-air combat. In some situations, however, its laughable slowness could actually be used to its advantage.
The evasion techniques to avoid enemy fighters were pretty limited, frankly, because the aircraft is very slow, and if they were caught at low level, jinking the aircraft around and trying to use its low speed was the best they could do. One of the techniques that they used was to dive the aircraft almost vertically towards the sea. It could then get up to 200 knots, damn fast for a Swordfish, but pretty slow for a modern fighter of the day trying to catch it up. In fact, the fighter would catch it up and go whizzing past it, and in some instances, the fighter would then end up in the sea while the Swordfish had survived.
In 1943, Britain was losing the Battle of the Atlantic to the German U-boats. The Navy was so desperate, oil tankers and grain ships were converted into makeshift aircraft carriers to protect the supply convoys. These precarious Mac ships required a plane tough enough to land on them in all weathers. There was only one candidate for the job, the Swordfish.
The difficulty of landing on a Mac ship was mainly because of its pitifully small size. We had a wingspan of 45 foot 6 inches, and the width of the deck inboard of the bridge was something of the order of 58 feet. It meant a lot of crumpled wingtips. The role of the batsman in our landing was one of dictatorship. We weren't in a position to judge the rise and fall of the ship or the roll of the ship. whereas he could feel it through his feet. The poor old batsman was in a very vulnerable position. If the ship rolled to starboard, once we were committed to a landing, the port wing of the aircraft went right over the point where the batsman was standing, just at throat height. He would be decapitated if he didn't jump clear.
The Royal Navy historic flight keeps its Swordfish flying as a tribute to the aircraft and its wartime crews. Stanley Brand has a particular attachment to this string bag, W5856. In 1944, he crashed it.
I was given this aircraft to go and do some dummy deck landings to improve my skill before joining a Mac ship. And apparently there was a defect in the petrol system because the engine cut out on me when I was 30 feet up on the takeoff. I turned over and went tail first, upside down, into a ploughed field, ripped the top wing off, and I got doused in petrol. I woke up with a WAF nurse giving me a glass of hot milk to counter the lead in the petrol, and feeling a bit nervous about things. Some clot flying around the circuit with a dummy torpedo on, which was 1,500 pounds of concrete, pressed the wrong tit, and it came through the roof of the sick bay and landed about 8 feet from me. It's reputed that I took one look at it and passed out again, but my less reputable friend said I just used it as an excuse for burying my head in the bosom of the nurse. So I have nostalgic memories of this aircraft.